Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of I Am Christina DiArcangelo. And today with me, I have the amazing Renee. This is take two. We tried to start the shoot earlier, and we're getting storms over here in the Philadelphia area. And so we're starting back over again. Welcome, Renee. Thank you for joining me today.
Welcome. Thank you very much for having me, and it's very nice to see you face to face for the first time.
Yes, it's so nice to see you face to face because, as we said prior to coming on today, we're connected across all these different social media platforms, but it's not often that we get to talk to one another face to face. It's commenting and sharing posts and such.
Yeah, and it's been a while since there's been all the panels and whatnot that, used to be sort of how we would have our socials, and years since the Women Grow era, right?
Yes, it has been years since I think, I participated in the last event in DC.
Oh, wow.
That was a couple of years ago because it was pre-COVID. They had that big event and it was in June. I remember because it showed up in my memories not too long ago.
Right.
And that's how I could remember. So I'm sure I saw you there because everybody was at the last Women Grow in DC.
I didn't make it to DC.
No?
Yeah, no, I made it to, I think the final one in Denver was the last one. And then just sort of did regional after that, LA a couple times. I loved going down to LA. I didn't have a chance. I was always wanting to get out to the Midwest because of the chapters there. Texas has always been a radioactive state for me. So thumbs up to all the ladies in Texas, but they were always a long wave.
Yeah. So we didn't meet there then. But I want to talk about, what it's like to work in the cannabis and psilocybin now, which is coming up on the heels of cannabis, as far as the industry is concerned, working in as an LGBTQ member, because we're both women. So we obviously have that in common. We both work in cannabis and psilocybin, so we have that in common because, I always like to show things that, show others that we are the same, right? But I don't, other than what I've observed, I'm not LGBTQ. I'm straight, so I can only talk about what I've observed. I wanted to talk with someone like you to talk about your experience, especially we missed the mark last June, this past month in June, because I wanted to have you on for Pride, but we just couldn't get our calendars together. So we're coming in a little bit after, but I really wanted to talk about this specifically because of June. Not that it's not like we can't talk about it any time of the year, but I purposely wanted to talk about this.
Well, it's Pride season. The nice thing is that June was sort of the official month and whatnot, but Calgary and Alberta's September. After the long weekend, it was the most inconvenient weekend they could find for the folks there, deliberately. So again, it's now a season from the beginning of May till September, and that's good. It allows us to more or less have the conversations. August is short on parades, but July is usually pretty crazy. The big differences was really from day one. I was never meant to be a woman in cannabis industry. That was a quirk of exiting a 23-year marriage, being outed just after I'd gone public, and I'd been outed by my ex, and so I had to go on Facebook and come out ahead of this and explain what being trans was. And unfortunately, news leaked back to the board of directors, and I was 6 months ahead of Caitlin. So she explained to everyone what it was. I was having to do it on my own on a case-by-case basis. And I hadn't intended on coming out, so it was a shock to everybody when it happened. And so there I was, the fourth publicly traded cannabis company ever, which is huge. License 005. 005. We're now up to almost 900, I think. So early, And I got that because I had guessed right. When the regulations first dropped, I guessed right. I knew how to do the security from having been a security guard once. I'd been a defense contractor, so clean fingerprints. Had never actively been part of the underground. I'd grown since high school, but that was my business. And I just never gotten caught. So, yay. So, when I wrote the application and got a license, it shocked all the straight white guys in Vancouver who were convinced they were going to get a license based on, quote, merit. Why? Well, they were a doctor, a lawyer, they were rich, they were white. So therefore, duh. And I got a license, and that shocked everyone because I don't have a university degree. And so they were just sort of, oh, you're lucky. But they were willing to help me with my company because clearly I needed much more experienced men to guide me on this voyage. So when I came out and they found out I was actually female, suddenly I discovered this weird fact that all my experience and knowledge and everything kind of vanished. And there's always a better qualified man for your job. And that was something I never had to worry about as a man, is that unless you actually kill someone, and even then, there's a number you can get up to before they act. There's tolerability for male CEOs on everything, but I suddenly discovered zero for females. You're not good enough to do your job, so let's introduce you to this Harvard Wharton Ivy League white straight guy. He can help you, which is take your job and push you out. Because really, this would be more valuable with a man.
It's funny when I grew up, I grew up a blue collar kid. My dad was a union guy, and very blue collar. And one of the things that he used to tell my brother, and we're Italian, obviously. So it's very odd to hear this coming from my dad's mouth to everyone's ears, was that he always said to my brother that I would have to work harder and stronger and smarter as a woman to be successful. And while my brother may be following his footsteps and working in a blue collar world, which is very strenuous, I'm not putting that down.
It'll kill you.
Yep. But what my dad used to always say is that what I have to do and how I have to do my work is much more energy zapping than his job will ever be.
It's the tax. And that's the other thing, is that you're not allowed the behaviors, right? So if you're not allowed the behaviors, you're not allowed the freedom to be, right? So Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, all famous for their screaming tantrums, right? It's perfectly acceptable. But women are policed how we dress, how we act. Our smallest facial expressions are read into. And if we do freak out, we're not mad, we're emotional.
Emotional. That's, and it's women that also do this in the space as well.
Crab in the bucket. That's the crab in the bucket phenomenon. The women that have learned to adapt in the patriarchy and achieve their spurs, they don't want to come down. They've earned those. They've also paid a lot of prices for those, and I don't take away from that, but they shouldn't have had to pay those prices.
They shouldn't.
It's a false sense of pride when you've had to do something icky. It's not a badge of honor, and it's not a war wound. No. It's a trauma wound, and you should be mad. You shouldn't hate other women coming up who didn't have to suck dick. Okay, that's weird. It's not a badge of honor. And, this is kind of the problem in cannabis. Was part of the problem with the legacy market is it's those guys want their rightful place. They were the big bad dope slingers in the dark old days, and they want to now be the dick swinging suits with the stock.
And try to be legitimate now.
Yeah. And this was, the anti-corporate establishment crap kills me, because I've lost track of the number of folks that are, I hate these big MSOs, whereas I've got a brand in 8 states and 14 product lines. And you're not an MSO then, by definition. But there's this cognitive dissonance that boys have and allow themselves in this industry that women aren't. They can come out of the gate fully integrated with 50 product lines and 18 grow plans and 4 states, and nobody blinks. That's ambitious. Oh, love that. But a woman comes out and says, I have a topical based on women's vajayjays, and 50% of the population have vajayjays, so that's a good market. And guys will go, yeah, but is that really a good market? What if you made it into a sex lube and we sold it for horny guys? That's not what we make. Yeah, but you should.
Yeah.
Will you finance it if we do that? No, we can't be associated with something like that. Okay. So this is kind of the dilemma. I found out really the second guessing is what, so there's a filtering process to female businesses in cannabis. And it really comes down to, 98% are eliminated by the gatekeepers who don't even get it near the people capable of writing checks. Once you get to the check folks, they're looking for specific silos, and it's about return on investment, right? They're looking to figure out how to get their money out. Most women have had to do a small to medium business plan of survival, modest startups, proven themselves utterly as perfectly capable startup CEOs. But the problem is, anytime there's a big check, there's this paternalistic need that somehow you could manage pennies, but somehow you can't manage dollars. That's the inversion of the Scottish proverb, you morons. And the Small Business Administration's proven it through study after study. Women startups are more successful, have a higher startup rate, a longer survivability, right? And so if I was playing portfolio theory as a fund, I would weigh 75% of my portfolio on female startup founders, 25% males. I would assume most of my females will cash out and that'll be my bank. And I'm actually now using the guys as a hedge. Yeah, maybe one of them will hit it out of the park. Cool. But right now they've reversed it. 75% of their stable can flop without consequence. Not women. Women aren't allowed to flop. Women are not allowed to tank $1 billion company. Enron, remember?
Yeah.
And
it's true.
So this is kind of the problem, is that you can be a terrible man and be redeemable. Why? Well, that was in the past. They've apologized. It was just procedural. That was civil. There's lots of excuses, but for women, it's sort of like, well, is she really the right fit? Okay, she's from Wharton, has this, ran her own company, other stuff. Yeah, but will other people want to get behind her? By other people, do you mean men? Yeah, that's what we mean. Will men support her? Probably not, because most men won't. Yeah, see, that's a problem then. And that's kind of unfightable. And that's kind of what I've discovered is women have been told it's about, well, you need to have your business slide deck. You need to have this. You need to have this. I call that the snipe hunting shopping list, is that women are being sent out to solve the problem men created with shopping for, oh, we found this reason. Oh, and we found this reason. And the guys are like, oh, yeah, keep bringing us reasons. Keep bringing us reasons. Good work, girls. No, at some point, we need to just stop engaging. Stop trying to fix the existing system. We need to build a new one. Because they won't let the new one be the one be fixed, because they're getting 98% of the return off it, right? So why would they? Why would they? So again, they're not being coy when they look at us like, take it from us. Okay, if business and capitalism was fair, we would. Trust us. We're good at this shit. And you want to talk about fearless? You be a single mom. Okay. So there's a lot of qualities that women entrepreneurs bring to business that men don't have, never face, and lack. And I don't know why they get complete and utter support.
I must say, I've noticed with my career how different I am now that I'm a mom, and I am a single mom, as you know. So that's why I was like, yep.
No, you are fearless. You will stab a bitch.
Yes, I will. That's my son. That's my, that's all I have. That's my legacy.
And but that's how you ran your companies before. And
they were my babies.
And so the difference is that in the man's world, you're basically raising a daughter to prostitute her on a street corner to a bunch of strangers, because that's economics. women don't view business this way. And that's why I believe that $3 trillion holdback that women wealth is kept out of the public market. $3 trillion that women control doesn't go anywhere near the stock market. Why? Men. Women are not going to invest their nest eggs in that crazy shit show. It doesn't make sense. It's never made sense. It's all volatility all the time. It's all hype, and women know this. Well, and no matter how you try to trick women into investing in the stock market, women don't.
Well, I've got to tell you, I purchased a new vehicle recently, and I buy car. I'm in and out of my car every year to two because I get bored, and so I just ended up getting like a Jeep, which I've never had a Jeep ever, and so I got like a Willy, and I thought it would be fun, with my kid and the dog, and then they're not in my Benz screwing it up, right?
Yeah.
This was the first time, and I've bought several cars since I was 19. Yeah. I had my first lease, so here we go. We buy a car as a woman, as a young girl when I was young, and you go through the gamut. The reason why I'm bringing this point is that I bought this car from two women.
Beautiful.
It was the best experience I have ever had buying my vehicle. I mean, first off, the music that was playing was awesome when I walked into the dealership. They had Starbucks coffee because they pay attention to detail, right?
Yeah.
And I was on a Zoom talking to them about this deal, and I had a Starbucks. So they saw that I liked Starbucks. So when I showed up, they had a Starbucks waiting for me. So also when I showed up, because they were so good to me during this process, it was a really nice and easy, breezy, all the stuff out there in the media about buying cars right now is so horrible is bullshit, because it wasn't a bullshit experience. It was very good. I brought two of my CD candles for them because, because they were good to me. Right. Yes. And here, this was one of the best experiences. And I drive a high-end car. I've been driving a Benz since I was 30 years old. Okay.
I'm being treated like an adult of worth is amazing. I used to have a cigar store long ago. Cool. I was an importer exporter. So this was back when cigars had a boom in the 90s. Okay. So I got into it on issue 2 of Cigar Aficionado. And so I created a lounge for men, and it was oak paneling, leather high back chairs, the little lockers with their brass nameplates on it, little place to store their scotch, and it was deep, carpet, wool carpet, and luxury bathroom, everything. Why? Because I was selling a $95 burning piece of vegetation. No logic on earth made that worth it. Nothing. It's stupid, and it probably will give you mouth cancer. And there was a billion reasons to not smoke a cigar. But if you gave someone the perfect experience, that $95 cigar was part of the whole thing.
That's right.
Right? And that's really what you're selling is the experience. What those people gave you was your first adult car buying experience that you would actually call a pleasure.
Yes.
That's gold.
Yes.
That's gold. And this is our conversation. Women entrepreneurs, I think, really pay attention to the details for business reasons. That wasn't done because they were just being woke or anything. It's hard psychology why women are people pleasers. We have to. There's a penalty called violence, death, and rape when we get the smallest things wrong. And so it doesn't matter. Going to your car, those are the 3 options that might pop out of the lottery machine tonight, right?
That's right.
So even in a work thing, I don't want to piss off Dan. Why? Well, you never know. He might rape me in the parking lot. These are the thoughts that pop through women's heads that never occur to men.
I trained in 2020. 2021. I'm sorry, 2021. McGraw. So that if, God forbid, I was ever attacked, because I don't have the best situation with my ex-husband, and I work in cannabis, and I'm disrupting pharmaceuticals. I know what I'm doing. So, and I have my child full time. And so I had to, you're right, as a woman, I had to think about, I have to protect, I already box 7 days a week. But if I box, I can get an ag assault charge, right?
Yeah.
Krav, I can subdue my attacker and roll out and call 911 after he's been face planted on the ground.
Yeah, because that's a stupid thing. You will get charged while you're the woman defending yourself. God help you hurt a man. I know he was trying to assault you, but that guy was a doctor. His hands, for God's sakes. You know, look at all the fuss over Weinstein's work, right? So this is, I think, also, you know, in cannabis and psychedelics, the issue. You've got bro culture, you've got bro finance. Finance determines everything, and this is really the real cornerstone that women entrepreneurs need to understand. Exits determine investment. Okay, there's only two ways to exit: you're acquired or you go public. There's no other way. That's just not, it's just, there's, until aliens arrive with another alternative, those are the two ways. So if you are seeking finance and you haven't thought how you're going to be acquired or how you're going to go public, no one's going to invest in you. What they will do is suck your ideas out of your head, waste your time, send you on a billion chases, and never fund you. And you will become exhausted, stressed, and ruin your business. That you're already doing fine before you sought financing.
Yes.
Women are particularly predated on this. Our time is wasted when the answer was always no on the first meeting. They don't want to look like dicks, even though they're dicks. Card-carrying, certified, gold-plated dicks. They don't want to come across as dick because now there's a penalty, right? So they want to still be dicks, but not be penalized for it. So what I try to suggest for women entrepreneurs is if you can't have the hardball, how we're exiting conversation, you don't go near these sharks. And then when you do, being sold is sold. You better not be your baby. You better not be treating this like it's saving the planet, because A, no one's going to fund you for charity. And that's what foundations are for. So if it's a business that you plan on selling, you are growing it up to sell it. So you need to be a lot more hardcore and less sentimental and less flowery. What you're selling the public isn't what you're selling on the slide deck. And men know this. The slide deck that they sling is, this is what we really need. We're really going to do this, 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 and this, and this with the data. It wasn't about whatever the app was. That's the shit they sell the public, the consumer. That's how they get the asses in front of the whatever, or the data into the box, right? Women try to align somehow their business and their personal, the real message of the company. The investors have to believe it too. Men never really deal with any of these existential questions. They are lying to their shareholders, they're lying to their investors, they're lying to the public, they're lying to their spouses. It gets pretty normal at a certain altitude. It's just a degree of truth. We weren't completely lying. This part was accurate, right? I meant it when I said it. Women don't operate that way. You know, we don't even apply for jobs unless we're 100% qualified. 100%. Studies have shown men will take a fling at 60%. Can you imagine how many airplanes are flown by people who just took a shot? How many corporations were given a VP title or above because they applied?
Well, you know,
that's insensible.
We used to have a saying when I lived in, Cali, because, I lived over there for a good amount of my career in San Francisco. And my Persian adoptive father used to say, fugu, fuck up, go up.
Yes.
And that's what you see in a lot of corporate America. You see people fucking up and going up. And
because it comes down to that comment that the voters made about the original George Bush, or the George Bush 2, was, I'd like to have a beer with the guy. He may not be the brightest, but I'd like to have a beer with the guy. And that covers up most male CEOs, as long as they're likable. The number one penalty I get nailed with as a female CEO founder: you're not likable. They don't like dealing with you. Why? Well, you talk too much. Okay, I've never heard a male CEO ever being accused. Elon, excuse me?
Yeah, he's on Twitter every second. Yeah, come on. I
He's
mean,
trying to buy the megaphone, for Christ's
I
sakes.
mean, even Trump, when he was in power, he was on Twitter all the time, all hours of the night. And this isn't Trump bashing or anything. It's just male influence, right?
No, they're allowed to. There's an allowability. So as a female CEO, I have a version of sit there, look pretty. Still, right? And so 90% of all the IPO stock that hits a broker is bought by male clients. So if you want to know why the wealth isn't going into women, women are not allowed to participate in the founders rounds or other stuff unless it's friends and family. They aren't insiders at the brokerage level, so they don't get the early IPO stock and that level of stock. They hear about it after it's been hyped on the open market and all this first crowd are exiting out. So women are the fleeced in a public operation. They're never at the beginning. And this is why that exponential wealth never makes it into women entrepreneur hands or their C-level, right? And so it's a diversion. So even when a female founder is lured into the system, the bulk of the wealth is stripped away immediately by the system. And so they blame individual corporations and CEOs and boards, but the real problem is the brokerage in the middle. They've never been penalized. They made money off of Enron. Yeah. None of them ever got penalized. They sold it up, they sell it down. They make money on the elevator up, they make it on the way down, and they walk away like nothing was bad.
Look in pharmaceuticals, right? Look at all the money these people make on drug failures, right?
Absolutely.
They invest, they get out before the data comes out. So
we can have an entire podcast on pharma, because to me, it's kind of like it's the dark side of science exemplified. Why? Because there was no pharma beforehand. You could go to a chemist. He would whip you up a batch of cocaine and morphine and you would take it home and no one knew it was addictive. Well, they kind of knew that poppy was addictive. There were warnings by monks, but hey, what's addiction? That's a moral failing. You stop it. And we kind of had that psychology, but it's insufficient for our society anymore, right? And so when we industrialize and business incentivized compounds, this is why we have clinical trials, right? They didn't come up with the idea themselves. Pharma had a gun put against their head and said, can you please prove that shit you put on the label?
It really works. Yeah.
They didn't really want to do it, but what they discovered after extensive class action lawsuits through the 70s and 80s was this weird insight. Quality assurance protects our asses. It's cheaper to do real, actual quality assurance in clinical trials than fake it. What? This is crazy. And now you're starting to see where they understand that not getting sued is the business reason for quality assurance. Cool. So now at least we have trained professionals, mostly female, that are the 80% of pharmaceutical company hires and employment. So when you think of the pharmaceutical industry, 80% of the work is women, professional, competent women who show up every day and follow the rules. Where are the bad examples from? Oh, that's the C-level and above. Well, what do they look like? Funny thing is, they look like Enron. Pale and male, over a certain age, from a particular demographic.
Do you remember when COVID was just ramping up and a biotech, I won't say who it is because I don't want to be sued, but a biotech on the East Coast in the Northeast section had a conference. The CEO of that biotech authorized this conference while COVID was going on. There was 2,000 to 3,000 people at this conference.
Make a vector.
This person then who authorized this conference, obviously COVID spread throughout and left and flew to another state infected with COVID. And
Vectors.
this was a CEO of a biotech company. And I've worked for this biotech company in my career. So
Yeah.
I was like really upset when I read this in the news, because I was like, what in the hell? Like, are you serious? Like, I'm a CEO, for a biotech, and I would never authorize a conference.
This pandemic, I think, proved another big lie that I don't think women realized. What has been the argument for 100 years? We can't stop society to fix this problem due to unintended consequences of stopping society. And they've used it against people of color, right? We can't stop this train. We can't. And that's been used by Democrats and Republicans in Canada, conservatives and liberals. We can't stop this train. The pandemic stopped the train. They proved it could be stopped. What I was hoping for was, well, it's stopped. Why don't we fix systemic racism and misogyny? You guys said you couldn't fix it till we stopped the train. Train stopped. Let's fix it.
And we have time. We have time.
They deliberately made sure that we were distracted by scarier things. So it's impossible to talk about women's rights
hacking
now when they're burning down the institutions.
Oh, we can't talk about it at all. One of my friends got put a post up on Instagram because one of her friends posted on Twitter a comment about the recent ruling that came out of the Supreme Court last week. It feels like last year, but it was last week. And because the person just merely said F the ruling, nothing about people in general.
The troll army is out.
Not trying to go after Supreme Court justices threatening bodily harm, nothing, just F the ruling. That's all they wrote. The National Security got in contact with Homeland Security, she got a letter in the mail telling her that basically, her activities were treason based and she better stop it.
I bet you it's probably a fake letter sent by a troll. The government, from my working experience, a long time ago, Stormfront knocked on my door looking for a place to host their content. I had a data center, and I had a very what I call a liberal policy on hosting. At one point, we were hosting probably 60% of the world's porn sites. I wasn't judgmental, but I told them to fuck off. Stormfront found its hosting elsewhere. So clearly business does business with Nazis. These guys are real Nazis. It's literally in their stuff. And so the problem is shades of Nazi, shades of that kind. I mean, and even throwing that word around, it's become so banal now, it rarely applies accurately, right? But to me, I sort of look at this mythical thing and say, if the list of things that you say and propose would get a thumbs up from a Nazi, so you're probably on the wrong fucking side of the moral question here. And that's kind of where I've been lost in Canada and the United States. Cannabis has strangely been both this cultural icon of the culture and the left, but it's entirely dominated, owned, and controlled by the right.
Right.
And that's baffled me because, again, it's control and it's cash, right? And those are the two catnip elements of it all. But I still believe potentially, especially with clinical trials, and this is the weird catnip, applications and clinical trials are the filter to keep out the lazy and the stupid. And it's not nice for me to say that because there's all these folks that are like, fuck clinical trials. No, you don't understand the point of them then, sunshine. You shouldn't be in this industry. And if you're selling a compound you whipped up that isn't cannabis, you're playing with people's lives then, moron. And there's certain things that we can't do outside the clinical model. Why? It's ass cover and it's science. Why bother making it if you can't prove
that's
scientifically?
The method of action. Right.
Mary Curie didn't kill herself by just trying shit
and
not writing it down. If you're going to do this, you've got to be a scientist about it, right? And so I didn't mind the drugification, so to speak, of cannabis. It was harmless. Go and vape your silly ass, with 100% THC if you can make it. I didn't care. Edibles, fill your boots, 1,000 milligrams, You'll freak out, but you won't die.
Right.
But when you cross over into the plant spirit medicines and the other more compounds, the more you step on it, the harder it gets, right? And so we're starting to tinker directly, I believe, with the soul, with the mind, with some foundational shit. And if we do not have the framework of clinical trials, risk assessment, human safety trials, we're trying shit that's never been human safety tested. But, well, they've been doing it in the jungle for thousands of years. Yeah, they were also cannibalizing people for thousands of years, headhunting for thousands of years, eating monkey meat straight from the monkey. There's lots of stuff we don't do now because we know better. We don't rub the brains of our killed enemies on our body because, that's bad. But it took us hundreds of thousands of years to stop rubbing brains on our bodies after we had killed them in some parts of the world. So this pandemic, to circle it back, I've fought mold as most of my career in cannabis and psychedelics. Mold is my enemy. Contamination. And it's contamination directly linked to stupid humans who won't do what they're told.
Right.
And in order for me to get to a mold-free environment, which is the size of a basketball, I have to bag people like they're contaminated waste with no skin showing. They're literally in baggies their entire working day just to keep their goo out of my goo.
Right.
Right? And that's how powerful it is. And a virus is the size of a dot on a page compared to the basketball. And I thought, I have no fucking hope against COVID. And yet I'm watching half the people in cannabis going, no, I'm just going to take this sheet warmer. What? Mold, moron. Mold. Can you keep mold out of your grow room? No. Then you can't keep COVID out your nose, moron.
No.
Really? Do you wear masks in your facility? No. Okay, then, here's your problem. So asepsis for me is the twin sister of clinical trials, right? Asepsis is the standard. It's the nines for pharmaceutical. The reason you have to recall baby formula and create a shortage, oh, well, you didn't replace your equipment for 20 years? How was that even in their
possible
brain somewhere, right? There should have been a phase roll-up upgrade, but no, let's just drag it to the edge of the cliff and hurl the whole company into the abyss. This is the shit that I want to see changed by bringing more women to leadership, more women to the board, and specifically on the subject of psychedelics. I want to see many more women companies in control because I guarantee you 90% of the shit show, trauma fest, litigation will be hung around the neck of cis white male CEOs with too much damn money.
So, with that, holy cow, you just lit it on fire today, my friend. Thank you.
And that's why I don't get invited to the White House.
That's okay. We're not at the White House today. But I want to thank you so much.
I love this. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're the first chance that I've had to meet face-to-face an archangel. So this was special. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And I meant to say something about your background because I just love it.
Oh, my wife picked this up because it's Pride season. So I went full meal deal.
I love it.
Cureleaf had me do a Pride thing for them this year. So I got to address their corporation.
Good for you.
And it came in from DEIC upstairs, right? And I found a message, I think, that resonates during Pride that applies is that basically DEIC isn't a gimme or a bonus. It's good business. Why? If you as a corporation don't look like your customers, you're an imperialist harvesting out of a community. So if you want to be a valid, long-term, profitable business, you need to represent your marketplace. And that's good capitalism straight from Adam Smith's mouth. There's nothing socialist about it.
I would agree with you. I would absolutely agree with you. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. I'll have to have you on again so we could talk some more.
Anytime. This has been lovely. Thank you.
No, thank you. And remember what we always say, We are the same. I am Christina DiArcangelo.